if you're considering buying a KLX230R versus the KLX300R, you might think that, well, if you're bigger or taller, just get the 300. And if you're smaller, just get the 230. But that's not necessarily the case generally, but I'm going to break down the main differences and how to know which is best for you, or if you should buy a different bike. When comparing the power, both of these bikes, the 230 and 300, are going to have very smooth, predictable, easy to control power. They have decent torque right off of idle, and the power curve is pretty flat, which is great for learning how to ride. It's great for trail riding. It's not going to rev up and feel snappy and jerky, even at low speeds, especially compared to a race bike. But the biggest difference is going to be that the KLX300 is going to have noticeably more power, especially down low, but pretty much across the RPM range. It's not a huge difference, but it's going to feel like it has about 20% more power than this. Both have 6-speed transmissions, and they're both spaced pretty well. First, second gear are pretty low, good for trail riding at low speeds, 5-10 miles an hour, while fifth and sixth gear are tall enough to be cruising down a gravel road, 45, 50, 55 miles an hour. Although the 300 can handle a little bit taller gearing if you want to cruise at higher speeds. Next is the size. The first several years of this 230 are technically taller seat height at 36.2 inches tall, I believe, where the KLX300 is 36 flat. However, when you actually sit on it, the 300 is going to feel bigger. The stiffer suspension is going to hold up a rider a little bit taller, plus the 300 is going to feel wider and also longer compared to this. I am 5'6" with about a 27-inch inseam, and I got my left tippy toe down and I got my butt shifted over just a little bit. Both of these bikes are going to be fairly tall unless I shift way over, which is fine until you get into a really technical trail. Then it's going to be a little bit on the tall side. If you want something that you can easily flat foot or put both feet down, which I don't think you need to put both feet down, but if you want more confidence, I recommend going to a lower seat height, like 34 or 35 inches, or getting one of these and lowering it, which is fairly easy to do, which I show you in another video up here. And then both the 230 and 300 have fuel injection and electric start only, which I really like the fuel injection. It starts up right away every time. It's not going to get dirty from using bad gas like an old carburetor would, and it automatically compensates for like elevation changes, so you don't need to change out jets when you're going from like 5,000 to 9,000, or like here in Minnesota 1,000 to 12,000 up in Colorado. As far as the handling goes, everything about this except for the seat height is going to be shorter compared to the 300. What does that mean when actually riding it though? Well, with the shorter wheelbase and the smaller turning radius, it makes it really easy to turn at low speeds, meaning it takes less effort. You can weave in and out of tight turns or trees with less effort, but the downfall is that it won't be quite as stable. So when you're riding over rocks, or when you're going up a steep hill or down a steep hill, or riding through whoops, it's going to rock back and forth, or it's going to want to wheelie more easily than the 300, which has a longer wheelbase. So you just got to compare if you want something that's better for tight woods or something that's a little bit more stable. Next is the suspension, and the 230, it has noticeably smaller components, so they're going to flex a little bit more. This makes the ride feel a little bit softer, although if you're a beginner, you probably won't notice it. But if you're a bigger rider, or if you're riding more aggressive terrain with rocks and whoops and stuff, you're probably going to feel that flex a lot more, and it's going to feel a little bit mushy. And the 230, it doesn't have any adjustability in the forks or the rear shock, other than adjusting the preload, which will lower or raise your sag, where the KLX300R does have some damping clickers to do some fine-tuning adjustment. You still have to have the right spring rates, but it can help make the bike feel a little bit stiffer or softer depending on your specific needs. Another thing to note is that the 230, it's air cooled, so it doesn't have any radiators to worry about. This means that if you tip over, you're not going to bend or puncture a radiator and have coolant leaking out and your ride is over. It's also less likely to overheat, although that is still possible if you're riding at a crawl speed and abusing the clutch and throttle. Whereas the 300, it has radiators because it's liquid cooled, and this is what helps give it more power, because liquid cooled bikes, they can have higher performance engines without overheating. If you're watching this or any other of my videos and you're still unsure which bike is right specifically for you, I do offer one-on-one consulting where you can talk to me on the phone or video chat. The link is in the description below. As far as reliability goes, the 230 and the 300 are both super reliable as long as you do regular maintenance. You should be getting hundreds, if not thousands of hours before doing a major engine rebuild. Now you might be thinking, well, if the KLX300 is a liquid-cooled bike, doesn't that mean I'll have to do valve clearance checks and rebuilds more often? Potentially, yes, but it's not like a typical race bike that requires frequent rebuilds and valve clearance checks every 20 hours. It does have more performance than this, but it's more like a street bike engine where it's kind of detuned compared to the motocross or enduro race bikes. You should still be able to get 500 hours, if not way more than that, if you're doing regular oil changes and keeping the air filter clean. And me personally, I wouldn't even worry about rebuilding it unless there's some major symptom that I'm noticing, like some loud engine knocking, or it's burning a lot of oil, or it's running low on compression. As far as price goes, the KLX230 retails at about $5 grand, where the 300 is closer to $6 grand. And as you might expect, the used prices are going to be pretty comparable, where this is going to be $500 to $1,000 cheaper on the used market. You can probably pick one of these up a few years old with relatively low hours for less than $4 grand. I almost forgot to mention the weight, because that is a big factor when deciding which bike to get. The KLX230R weighs about 255 pounds depending on which model and year you get, whereas the KLX300 weighs 282 or 285 pounds. So 25-30 pound difference, and while you're riding it, it's not going to be quite as noticeable, but if you fall over and you need to pick it up, that extra 25-30 pounds is going to be considerably more frustrating to pick up, especially if you're a small guy like me and you don't have big guns because you don't go to the gym. So which should you buy? Well, you should get the KLX230R if you want something that's a little bit smaller. It turns and handles a little bit easier with less effort. It weighs less, and it's a little bit cheaper. Whereas you should get the KLX300R if you want something that has noticeably more power, a little bit better suspension performance, is going to be a little bit more stable, especially if you're a bigger, taller rider and you don't mind the extra 25-30 pounds. However, I do need to add that the 2007 and older KLX 300s are a little bit different because they're kickstart only and they have a carburetor. They were discontinued in 07, then Kawasaki updated it and bring it back in 2019. The main advantage of the older bike is if you like simpler and less weight. The kickstart in the long run might be a little bit more reliable than the electric start, but I still prefer electric start. And the carburetor is a little bit simpler than the fuel injection system. So if you don't mind messing with jets, then the older model, I believe, is 15 to 20 pounds lighter, so almost as light as this 230. And again, if you're unsure what to get, I do offer consulting. The link is in the description. And if you want a list of all the best beginner dirt bikes that I recommend based on your size and budget, you should check out this video right here. I'm Kelly Fager from MXHideout. Ride safe, have fun.